Welcome everyone to another workplace wisdom session. This time I'm so excited. You know what? It is still the beginning of 2026. It seems like it's been going on for a long time now. But we're going to talk a little bit about your 2026 game plan and how to build a year for the life you really want. For those of you who don't know me, I am Dana Zellers, and I work with those busy professionals who know, like I do, that more hours is not the solution to more impact. And so whether you are one-on-one or working with a group or a team, I help you focus on sort of foundations, systems, and relationships in order to make your work life more effective. I have some amazing panelists with us today, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Latrell and I met really some time ago, and I knew her perspective on organizational structure and planning was really a perspective that I wanted to share. Latrell, will you please tell everyone a little bit about you?
Dana, it is so good to be here. Thank you so much. Yes, we met at the beginning of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Believe it or not, you can meet people during the pandemic. As Dana said, my background is strategy and planning, and while I do have a unique perspective on making plans and executing against a strategy, the reality is that it's not just work related. So I am looking forward to today's conversation. I am an author, speaker, and founder of an organization called Ox and Maven. You can find me on LinkedIn, which Dana, thank you so much for sharing that QR code. I look forward to connecting with everyone. But to not belabor today's conversation, I just want to jump right in and get after it. We can connect offline and talk more about what I do, but today's conversation is really about you.
I love it. I love it. And Lisa Snow, who I've also known for quite some time, does not just talk about wellness. She gets it. She talks about workplace wellness. How does this all work in reality? Lisa, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Excited to be here. The company is On Men Wellness. We do team building and employee wellness programs, largely on Zoom, geared towards remote, hybrid, and distributed teams. This year, I'm hearing from leaders that are just so worried about turnover and employees that even though they may be back to hybrid, still struggling with the isolation and kind of reacclimating to their companies, and excited to learn from you guys today.
Yeah, this is going to be such a great conversation. And of course, we have James Garrett, who I have had speak a few times in my coaches group. I took his amazing course, which you will need to learn more about on all things brain science and otherwise. James, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So grateful to be here and so grateful to be with all of you in the audience. So I run a company called Brain by Design. You know, our real passion is getting science out of the labs and into people's lives. There are so many powerful tools, whether it's workplace related or just personal growth and development related, that act a little bit more like science help rather than self-help. And we're really committed to getting those tools into people's lives and making the difference in that way.
I love it. And we, again, are so excited for the conversation today. The way that we're going to structure this is I'm going to ask some seeding questions to our panelists so we can talk a little bit about some of the foundational pieces that I think would be helpful for everyone to know. You can ask us questions, and we would love to hear those. So you can drop those in sort of the chat comment area of the event, and we will see those, and we will make sure that we are covering those as well. So pay attention if there's something that you're like, but how does this apply to me? Or what about X? Let us know, and we'll make sure that we will do our best to cover all of those pieces. To start us off, I would just like to talk a little bit about like, why did I even think, which I can share my point of view on, it's important to talk about what a new year looks like and why we want to do some big picture planning. So I'm going to start with James on this one because I'm sort of intrigued as to your perspective, knowing your background. But why do we talk about sort of a year and sort of diving in that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny. A lot of people like to poo-poo the New Year's resolution kind of turn because, like, hey, I can make resolutions at any time, which is, of course, true. But there is something about beginnings that you think of it like free motivation. The brain actually has a surge of motivation in any kind of renewal period. And so you can either surf that motivation and actually like ride it for a while, or ignore it, and it's just there, for free. So it is a biologically sort of good time actually to sort of make a plan, stick to it. There's just more momentum, more wind at your back at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Latrell, what would you say?
I would say that a lot of times people can operate from a place of regret and longing. So they're looking back over an arc of time, however long, and wanting and longing for something more, longing for something restorative, longing for something tangible from an outcome perspective. So many times people make and establish plans because they want more, or they're trying to rebuild and restore something that perhaps has been lost or never attained.
Oh, that's so poetic. And I think so true. Lisa, I know we all talk about wellness throughout the year, but there is sort of a surge for that at the beginning of the year. What do you think the opportunity is for us as we sort of look at our year as a whole?
If we don't have a plan for ourselves, I promise you with my last dollar that everyone else has a plan. And it may not be the plan that you want or the timeline that you want. So your clients and customers want things yesterday, and you want to deliver everything to them at a high quality, but maybe not yesterday. Your staff want everything yesterday, and you need to show up for them, but you also need to have your life happening. So the media has a plan. They want you watching it 24/7. Retail stores have a plan. They want you thinking about them 24/7. So if you're going to make time for yourself, whether that's to advance your business, your career, your wellness, some of those things need to be time blocked in your calendar, not just as hypothetical goals to happen someday.
Yeah, so true. I love each of these pieces. I think, again, starting with that sort of what I hear is the fresh start effect from James. Like, why wouldn't we take advantage of those things, those moments, whether it's the new year, whether it's a birthday, whether it's, I don't know, changing your clock at the seasons, whatever you're kind of hanging your hat on as moments that you want to do, we should take advantage of them. They are tools available to us. Latrell, as you were saying, I think there is something really poignant about figuring out what we really want and knowing that we have that year to kind of put that projection and that agenda out there, because otherwise our time is going to pass. And as Lisa mentioned, our time gets filled up really fast. So if we are just reacting to things and not putting our specific agenda on the calendar, really, I think the year, I do a lot of work with my clients on visioning for the year. I think it is a great time to step back and say, yeah, what do I really want? What have I learned? How have I spent time? What's gone well for me? What hasn't? What are some of those regrets? And why do I think that came about? And how am I really going to approach this year differently? So really taking that time to step back before we dive in and figure out how can I be more intentional this year about how I'm spending my time.
Dana, I think one of the challenges for a lot of people is that they're pushed up against, James, you could probably speak much more to this than I as a brain scientist. People push up against the stages of change. They don't actually always, well, I say they, but it's really we.
It's always we.
We don't always actually know what it is that we want. Yeah. In the stages of change, you want something different, but you don't necessarily know what the thing is. And for many people that supposedly push up against the momentum that we talk about in the new year, it's, I don't really know what I want. I just know I want something different. So let me not audibly say I want something concrete when I don't have anything concrete. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, well, let's press on that a little bit. So, as we're looking forward into January, into 2026, what are some ways, Latrell, that you think we can start to formulate? Okay, I do want something different, but I'm not sure yet what that is. How would you recommend we go about that?
Whew. Well, for me, that starts with foundationally my value system.
Yeah, love
It's
that.
not even from a professional perspective. It's got to align with what am I actually desiring, not so much from an outcome perspective, but who am I desiring to become?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's what kind of leader am I going to be? How is this leadership going to show up in my family life? What do I need from a health perspective in order to lead well? And it's just all
Yeah.
tangled up together. And then teasing out what's most important right now
Mm-hmm.
to support this bigger glob of moving forward and moving a needle towards success and what a successful outcome might look like. Starting with that from a value system
Mm-hmm.
perspective, what's really most important to me as a person of faith would be like, who am I becoming? But that may be different for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Lisa, that's resonating with you. So, what do you think about if people are kind of just not sure of how they're approaching the year or what they want to do? What would be some of your suggestions?
Love that idea of who am I becoming? And I think we all think of goals to do.
Yeah.
And there might be some goals of things to do. There might be some goals of things to have, whether that's money or a job title or more employees or what have you. There also
Mhm.
might be some goals of things to be. Maybe it's
Yeah.
a better listener or a better communicator or being more present on intake with new people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That becoming piece, I think, is lovely. James, what would you say about that? Either the becoming and or kind of how we approach figuring out how we want to figure out what we want to figure out.
Yeah, I love everything that's been said. I think the challenge when it comes to becoming is it gets a little nebulous,
Mhm.
and that is the struggle. Like we don't exactly know how to monitor that or measure that or kind of get granular about what that actually means. We have general senses that I'm becoming a better leader or I'm becoming more skilled in X area, or maybe we get feedback from others that kind of are indicators of that. But I think for me, this is where mental habits come in.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so if you can operationalize, if you want to become a better leader or in, with if it's a values based thing, I want to be more compassionate or I want to be more courageous. Uh, Wonderful to start there. And then is there a way to turn it into kind of a set of behaviors or habits or even mental habits that then are the kind of pillars underneath that ideal that you're trying to then become? One of the tools that works better with mental and emotional habits is if then plans rather than after then plans. So an if
Mm.
then plan is like, if I have the urge to speak first in a meeting, then I will ask an opening question instead, you know, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
There's a million different iterations of this, but leadership is a series of habits that leaders do a little differently than other people. And so the question is, what are those habits that then support that being that you're trying to become?
Mhm.
I
That's
love
great.
this sort of top down, bottom up perspective. So we want to know who we want to become, what we want to do, what are those things, but what does that really look like on a day to day? And so how do I pick the right things? Because I think a lot of people, they pick a new resolution or a new thing, and if it's not the right goal for them or habit for them or whatever it is, then they kind of lose interest or lose momentum. And so I
Mhm.
think tying it to your values can be a really important reinforcement about like, why is this important to me? Why is this the thing that I'm doing?
Mhm.
But then, as you mentioned, like having sort of these tangible pieces that we're going to look at that I'm going to pick that are going to get me there.
Yeah, that famous talk by Simon Sinek, The Power of Why, doesn't just apply to Apple or to business or to strategic planning. It applies to life. Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time we talk about New Year's resolutions and riding the momentum and all of those things from the perspective of what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to finish this class. I'm going to sign up for coaching with Dana. I'm going to do, I'm going to get my people through Lisa's program, and I'm going to listen to 8 of James's books, or whatever the case may be. Those are whats. Those aren't whys. And so when I speak to a value system of who I'm becoming, it's really about why. Why do I even want to be that type of person, that type of leader, that type of friend and colleague? Why? And then get kind of back into, okay, well, what am I going to do about it this year? What's attainable for me? What's realistic in the context of all the other pressures, the external pressures, my internal pressures, and the life that ends up happening along the way that disrupts my plan?
Yeah, I think that's a big one. And something that I would love to everyone to follow up on is life gets in the way. Life is lifey, whether it's the world at large, whether it is the weather, whether it is personal things that are happening. And so, we go into the year with these grand ideas, often very optimistic about where things will go. And I think that's important. But Lisa, I would love to start with you about what do we do about life not being maybe what we pictured? And so how do we respond when the world changes or our life changes or things are getting in our way?
Yeah. Part of it has to do with how we set up those goals to begin with, and part of it has to do with how we're reacting to today's dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're thinking about setting that stuff up from the beginning, those goals need to be time limited. And they can't all be like, by the end of this year, I'm going to have done these 10 things. It's like, okay, what are we going to do Q1? What are we going to do by the end of Q2? And are there weekly action items with those things? For a lot of things, daily is too small and you can drive yourself nuts because you didn't do it today. And then you're like, okay, I'm giving up for the week. But if you have weekly action items and you have an accountability buddy who can check in on that every week, you're more likely to get back on track. But if there are things that really need to be daily, like maybe someone has a 10,000 step a day goal, which might not work for everyone, but let's say they have that.
I'm at 6,000.
Yes, I love that, right? So the point is, do you have a good, better, best? Like your ideal day is maybe 6,000 steps. What's going to happen if it's a slightly crazy day? And what's the minimum that you're going to commit to if everything is on fire?
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't pick that good level. They pick the better and the best, and they don't think about that minimum commitment. So when everything's on fire, they're like, okay, I'm just going to do this tomorrow. And even if that minimum was really tiny, the fact that they're actually taking some action every day is huge. And it's the same thing with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And James, I know you have a perspective on this. What happens when things get in our way?
Well, Lisa nailed it on good, better, best. Elastic habits is one of my favorite kind of systems and relatively little known in that world of habit writing and science. Is designed by Stephen Geis, and it is a good, better, best model where you have degrees of difficulty for your habits, a small, medium, and large. And so it allows you to stay consistent even when things are crazy, because you can always go down to that lowest level, that kind of mini habit level. And again, where mini is mini, like under 5 minutes mini, like smaller than most people think. And so I think that capacity to do it at 11:30 p.m. when you're exhausted and tired and stuff got crazy, but I can still do this little 5-minute, routine or habit or ritual, allows you to feel like you're still winning when things get crazy.
Yeah. And Latrell, what would you add to this?
I would say that a lot of times we tend to beat ourselves up. Our negative self talk is very loud and very consistent. And although, again, I defer to James, like you tell me, is self flagellation. I believe with every fiber of who I am that self flagellation is not motivating. Beating myself up for the things that I didn't do, the goals that I set that I didn't keep, the ring that I didn't close on my watch, or whatever the case may be temporarily motivating,
Mm-hmm.
but at the if that happens over and over and over and over again, I think people tend to shut down, which is why they look at New Year's resolutions as this doesn't work. This just does not work. Because who wants to be beat up all the time? And so there's got to be some measure of reward, and the accomplishment of it in of itself should be the ultimate reward, but we tend to like treats along the way. Well, I like treats.
I have been known to bribe myself for things.
So I'm really curious about the science behind that, because I would imagine that a lot of people listening, and whether they're listening now or listening later, when you think about your own negative self-talk, it's not working.
Yeah.
Yeah. James, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. BJ Fogg, I think, said it best when he said, we change by feeling good, not by feeling bad.
Mm.
And he's right. And he's right because there's this part of your brain right above your eyes called your orbitofrontal cortex. It's right on the underside of your frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex. And its job is to keep track of how rewarding things are, or how enjoyable things are, how much fun they are, that kind of thing. So if people's experience with change or New Year's resolutions, as was said, is like the emotions associated with that process are negative, what the brain does is avoid that process in the future. But if the emotions that are associated with that process, they've had good positive emotions that are linked to that experience, the brain says, again, let's do this again. I like this. It wants to repeat the behavior. So this is we always think about habits as repetition, but there's an emotional driving force in the habit creation process that is often ignored. And to Latrell's point, a lot of it comes with this beating ourselves up. It's partly why self-compassion works and why beating ourselves doesn't, is because self-compassion actually creates a positive emotional response to a frustration or a block, or I didn't do it, and resolves that frustration with a positive emotional experience, which makes it more likely we're going to repeat the very thing that we just didn't do.
Yeah.
And so there is deep neuroscience for why this works. And it is one of the most prevalent myths that if I'm a stern taskmaster to myself, that I'm somehow going to stay committed to the goal. And actually, neurologically, you're literally creating an avoidance response toward doing that thing in the future.
So then tie that back to Lisa's comment on, if I've got a good accountability buddy, they're going to keep me on track, etc. I've had really fabulous accountability partners. Some, not so much. Some have been so focused on extending me grace for all of my missteps, for my laziness, for my slovenliness, for all the ways I didn't show up. Did you catch all that negative self-talk? Okay. Anyway, so they extended so much grace that they weren't really holding me accountable.
Yeah.
But I've had other accountability partners that have been more like a cheerleader. Like, okay, how can you break this down? How can you have some tiny measure of success so that you can add on to that, or you can at least begin building that tiny measure of success day after day after day, and then add on to that as you actually cultivate a habit. But then there are other accountability people that are more like sergeants and they come in screaming, "Get up out of that bed," and whatever. So there's got to be a balance.
A better and worse way to be an accountability partner.
Yes.
Lisa, do you have anything to add here in your experience?
Yeah, I think part of the selection process has to be that you want to figure out ahead of time what you want your accountability buddy to do. If you want somebody to be more of a drill sergeant, you need to pick somebody with that personality. And if you want somebody to be more of a cheerleader for you, you need to pick somebody with that personality, because they're not going to change who they are. And if you really want the cheerleader and your best friend is a drill sergeant, you need to keep them as a best friend and not use them as your accountability buddy.
Unfortunately, that doesn't always play out in the workplace, where your accountability partner is your board of directors.
Yeah, you can't choose your boss or your board, but if this is
but if we're choosing,
if this is for your health goals, for you personally, or if you're a business owner and you're intentionally choosing, maybe you're paying for a coach, but you're choosing another business owner who's not a coach as the accountability buddy for your weekly, maybe prospecting calls or your weekly staff meetings. Did you actually do them? If you have a choice, think about how little or how much pressure you want them to put on you.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I think, again, when we talk about these things, the idea that there is one solution for everyone is just not always the case. And so we need to know ourselves. I'm thinking of Gretchen Rubin's kind of work. She has kind of this differentiation where she breaks down, like, some people are more rebellious, and if somebody tells them what to do, they will not do it, whereas other people are very people pleasing, and if they have somebody that they need to be accountable to, it will much more likely hold them accountable to do it. I think the what I'm hearing from a lot of people is really understanding kind of where you're at and what you want. So if having an accountability partner is helpful to me, do I want this to be an absolute letter of the law? Like, I said I would do these 12 things. If I don't do these 12 things, I want someone to yell at me and hold me accountable. Do I want somebody who's a thought partner? And I talk about, like, that didn't really work. Why didn't that work? What are the things that I might want to try differently? Were those even the right goals? Kind of go through that. Do I want somebody who's a cheerleader, who is just making me feel good about kind of any one of those steps? I think it makes a huge difference, but I do think for a lot of us, having other people in our world, we know that there is some accountability that is successful. It is why when you have a job and your boss is asking for something, you are more likely to do it than those things that you said personally you want to do yourself. And so figuring out a way to incorporate some of those things that are successful for you into areas where maybe you haven't been as successful with things like an accountability partner, I think can be great tools and techniques depending on where you're at. So let's kind of talk about we talked a little bit about this in the context of these questions, but what are kind of the biggest mistakes that people kind of come into the new year, and what trips them up, what throws them off their game plan as they're doing that? Lisa, what would you say?
People expect their goals to be driven by motivation, and motivation is short term. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to hear what James has to say about this. There's a way deeper level to this too. But motivation is short term. And if you're going to have a goal that has weekly action items for the entire year, what are you going to do to keep that going when you have a lot of motivation, a little bit of motivation, and zero motivation? Mm-hmm. So is that accountability from somebody else? Is it that you're tracking that with some kind of habit app or in a spreadsheet for yourself? Can you link it to something else? Right? If you had a goal of stretching for 5 minutes a day, could you link that to brushing your teeth or something that's already in your routine?
Yeah. I feel like this is a James follow-up as well. What are some of your thoughts on the biggest mistakes that people make, or anything that we've noted so far?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And Lisa, you're spot on again. I think, yeah, the deception is that when we are in a motivated state, we assume it's going to continue. That's the big deception, right? And it isn't because we're not smart. It's just that there's something about motivation that's blinding to its limited nature. So it is like a wave. It is going to crash eventually. And so the question is, what then? To Lisa's point. So I and BJ Fogg tackles this directly with his tiny habits system. I think a lot of the systems out there are looking at the same question. The answer from BJ Fogg is keep it small, which means you need less motivation to do the thing. But I think the other, which is one answer, and it is an answer that works. It is absolutely, the science backs it up. Like, it really does work. And I do think for medium or larger goals, where it is maybe for one reason or another, either the person's highly motivated to hit a medium or bigger goal, better or best, or it just is required on the job. Like you have to put an X amount of time, 2 hours on editing or on whatever the thing is. And so I think in those situations, and this has already been said, which is forcing functions, sometimes they call them commitment devices in the research, but another so accountability is, we're already circling around this question or this tool. James Clear has this lovely quote. He said, "We care about belonging more than we care about improving." And so, and he's right. So we're much more socially sensitive than we have a sort of intrinsic desire to get better at things, even though we do have that intrinsic motivation to get better at things. And so you can leverage one against the other, or leverage it for the other. So other people are the best forcing function or the best commitment device. So if I need accountability, so there's this nuanced conversation we're having about accountability, but I think for me, it's just like, start with just making sure you have someone else you're doing it with, or that you're reporting back to, especially when they're medium or big sized habits or goals, because without that, you're toast. Because we are so tuned in to not wanting to look bad, not wanting to be a flake, not wanting to miss deadline, that if my running buddy shows up at my door at 6 a.m., guess who's going to be ready at 6 a.m., regardless of how my night of sleep was, right? There is a nice app called FocusMate.com, which is kind of drop-in accountability for work sprints. And I think that's a nice tool for if you don't have the best is actually in person. So if you have colleagues or others that you're working with, and you can do those kind of check-ins, work sprint. I'm going to work on this for the next hour. What are you going to work on for the next hour? And then report back and kind of do that kind of like as a ritual for the way that we work. We do it in sprints as kind of pairs, and that's kind of organize our workflow or our day. That's, I think, brilliant. And absent that, if you're a solopreneur, you can use apps like FocusMate.
Yeah, no, those are so great. I think there's so many ways these days to gamify things if you don't have that personal surroundings. But like you said, I think there are lots of ways that we can find that support community, whether that's having a running buddy, joining a running group, being in a Facebook group. There's a Facebook group for everything. So you can find your people who are there and looking for the thing that you are trying to do, and surrounding with yourself. I think, as you said, there's something about that, not wanting to let them down, that accountability, all of those things. But there's a different mindset. If people are talking about goals that are the goals that you want, then they're top of mind. They're talking about them in a different way than people who are not interested in those things. And so there's so much benefit to surrounding yourself with people who are looking to where you want to go, or even beyond, a little bit beyond where you want to go, as inspiration. Latrell, what other mistakes do you think people make as they're kind of approaching their year and their year planning?
I have 3 things. One is probably going to sound incredibly counterintuitive.
Oh, great.
Maybe even controversial, particularly in the workplace. but planning for rest, planning for downtime. I would imagine that there is a fair percentage of people that have just been burning the midnight oil and working after their kids are in bed and working through their lunch break and just grinding.
Yeah.
There's a time and a season for that, but long term, year after year, it's not healthy.
It's not.
It's not only not healthy, it reduces our capacity to create and produce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, diminishing marginal utility isn't just for turning widgets in a factory, it's for creative thinking. Particularly as leaders, it's important that you bake in rest, regular rest, not just I'm going to work however many months and then I'm going to take a few days off. You wouldn't do that to your body. And an athlete doesn't do that to their body.
Yeah.
They fuel it, they work it, and then they rest it for the sake of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't consistently do that, not just for ourselves, but for the teams and the people that we lead or shepherd, whatever your scenario is, it's truly a setup for, if not failure, not being your best.
Yeah.
Organizationally, personally, etc. So that's one, not actually planning
Mm-hmm.
for rest and taking it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, Latrell, the science backs you up like 1,000% on that. Like so deeply, it's insane. Like,
Yeah.
and it is the hardest thing I think for business leaders to take seriously because it feels counterintuitive. Because it's like, how am I getting more done with like rest looks like the absence of productivity, and so.
Yeah.
And so people have to have a lived experience with a boost in productivity by taking micro breaks throughout the day or other ways to rest. But absolutely, the athlete metaphor is so perfect. You want your people training like Olympic athletes.
Yeah.
And that is what they're, in fact, I had this friend, Joe Jacoby, who's a gold medalist in two-man kayak in the Barcelona games way back in 92. And I said, Joe, I said, what is the difference between the people who are on that top part of the podium, the ones who win gold, versus all the other amazing athletes at the Olympics? And he said, the difference is they rest better, more intentional, more deliberately. They're not messing around about rest. Rest is just as important as training.
Yeah. And sometimes, if not many times, everything about you says, I need to be doing. And you've got to force yourself to rest. You've got to force yourself to rest. So not planning for, not making room for rest, goals being too big, too out there, too far, not bite-sized. What do I do today? And what do I do this week? To Lisa's point, what do I do this month? What's my objective for this quarter? And the capacity to come back to it on a regular basis to say, is this still the right goal? Has my environment changed? Do I have the capacity? Do I need help? Do I need help? That's not on my list, but that's another story. And then lastly, I would say not planning for life. We mentioned it here, but strategists tend to make plans for everything to be ideal. Or you make plans based on today's environment, not the future environment as you project it to be in multiple scenarios. We typically don't do that. We plan for this right here. This is what life and the world and my health or our organization looks like here in January. And everything remaining constant, which nothing does.
Never.
But we plan as if all this is going to remain constant and I'm going to accomplish this objective. Well, I can't tell you how many times your budget doesn't even remain constant. in a corporate environment. This is your plan for the year. We want you to plan this and we want you to tweak it 18 different times so we get it just right. I need you to cut another 3%. I actually meant 7%. And now here's your budget.
Yeah.
And I need you
And
to
I'm going to
execute.
change the scope.
And 3 months in,
Yeah.
3 months in, your stock doesn't do what it needs to do as an organization. And guess what you're changing? Your budget.
Yeah.
You're changing your budget.
Yeah.
So not planning for life.
No, I think that's such a huge one. I think that it's, kind of a different lens of what James mentioned about, we have some blind spots in our self and in our being when we're looking forward to things. It's becomes kind of a joke coach question. It's like whenever anybody poses something, it's like, okay, what's going to get in your way? What are we not thinking about? And this same with teams. It's like, okay, let's do our pre-mortem. What are all the things that are going to go wrong? Let's not wait until the project's done if things have come up, but let's brainstorm those things and figure out, again, what is the impact? And maybe we don't plan for everything at the beginning, but we've got some contingency plans and we've got some check-ins. I think the one process piece that I've seen the most impact on is really making sure that you do have an institutionalized check-in process with yourself and with your team. Yeah. So I suggest, you don't need to go crazy, but I do suggest daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, we are having a little bit of that process where we're looking back and we're saying, okay, what did we learn? What are those pieces? And when we learn something, really learning it. So what does that mean? How do we want to handle those things moving forward? So that, again, we're not counting on ourselves to remember that, our budgets change every time we get a project. It's, hey, I've learned that every project, the budget has changed. How do I write that down on a checklist so that I'm going into my next project and thinking about like, okay, the budget could change. How likely is it that that's going to happen?
How can I do this for 7% less?
What knowing
knowing that they're going to ask for 3.
Exactly. And so how can we create some systems that are pulling those learnings in on a regular basis? Because we're not going to think of everything that's going to get in our way. But once something's come up a few times, we want to start planning for those sorts of scenarios. And so I think that is that reality of life is one of the things that comes in. And so as much as we want to be realistic when we're setting our goals, we want to keep learning and feeling good about adjusting them. That's not a failure of a goal or a plan if we decide that it's not what we want or it's not working for some reason and changing it. I think that that's really part of the process. And sort of acknowledging that that's definitely going to happen as we're going through is really important. I will, of course, keep asking our amazing panel some questions, but definitely we want to make sure that we are hearing your comments as well. One of the comments I got from someone that I was checking in with ahead of time was, basically the gist of the question is, I have some big goals, like getting a new job. I don't necessarily control the outcome of that. So what are some suggestions that you have as I go into the year about figuring out how I want to tackle something like that? Latrell, what would you say?
I would reframe the goal from the beginning. The language is dependent on external factors. Mm-hmm. I would reframe the goal to say, I would like to do X, Y, and Z towards the objective of changing my career or getting a new job or getting out of this company or moving up, etc. The things that you're in control of allow you to affirm that you've actually accomplished those goals, as compared to you doing all the things that you need to do and the environment still being the way that it is, and you supposedly not attaining the goal, and yet you expended all of this effort, all of this goodness, and you still didn't attain the goal. If the language of the goal is in your control, then you can say, yes, I did all of these things. I got coaching. I read these 10 books. I went to these networking events. I revised my resume. I got feedback on my resume and implemented it. I signed up for speaking classes or whatever the case may be. those are more obtainable how-tos for a goal as compared to I want to get a new job.
Yeah. So what are the real metrics that you think are going to drive that goal?
Yeah. What are you in control of?
Yeah, Lisa, I feel like this comes up a lot in fitness too, where it's like, I want to lose weight, or I want to run a marathon, or I don't know what. I don't know why people are in marathons, but bless them. But sometimes we, that's not necessarily where we're going to end up, with our best intentions. And so how do you handle that with things like wellness?
Yeah, it definitely applies to wellness and to work. For the person that's applying for the job, I think we need a huge culture shift for it to be okay to ask for help. And for that person, hiring a career coach might be the best money they ever spend. And the folks who hesitate to do that always say they don't want to spend the money, when in reality, it's that they don't want to ask for help and it has nothing to do with the money at all. So I think not only should be okay to ask for help, it should be okay to tell people that you're asking for help. It should be okay to tell people that you got help. And I think about Danny Taylor, who's this very well-known fitness coach, and she talks about how very often goals don't fail because the goal's too big. They fail because the support system is too small.
Mm.
So sometimes it is because the goal is too big, right? If you have a startup and you're like, I'm going to 10x my revenue this year. I'm like, I don't know if you're going to 10x your revenue this year. Like, maybe we should have like a little conversation with your accountant and your financial planner, and like, if you have a sales trainer, like, let's think about whether that's really possible. But if it's something like getting a new job, or, going from 0 to going to the gym 2 days a week, that's not because the goals are too big. It's because they need maybe some external support. So maybe it's a friend that's going to go to the gym with you. Maybe it's hiring a trainer. Maybe it's tracking some things in an app instead of just showing up and doing random workouts every time.
Yeah, no, I love that. I have hired a personal trainer, by the way. It's been a huge impact on me. So I endorse the getting support from others where it makes sense. James, what would you add to this?
I think it's been said. I mean, everything that Lisa and the Trail said it's just spot on. And again, we learn these things from experience, and then again, sort of slowly behind it comes the science to try to like prove that like our experience is actually valid, not that it wasn't in the beginning. It's just it's interesting to kind of like double down on empirical data and see verify those intuitions we have based on our life experience. But everything that has been said is just spot on with the science.
Yeah, I have a slight follow-up question on this. What do y'all think about SMART goals or other frameworks for kind of coming up with your goal? Latrell, it sounds like you're
I love them. I love them. I love them. I don't think it's a real goal if it's not a SMART goal, but it's just me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can change the language of it for whatever resonates. But I do think that there's been some pushback on that being like a successful framework. So I was like, whatever framework works. But I do think there's something about thinking about your goals. I mean, some of the things we've been talking about, like what's in your control, what's out of your control. It's like, what are you trying to do? And like, how realistic is that? What are you measuring it on? What are you tracking? James, do you have any science thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love SMART goals too. And I think, so one of my favorite journals actually is the Finisher Journal.
The Finisher.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And it's quarterly, so it's a 3-month journal. You set 3 quarterly goals, and then it weaves it together. Sorry, they're so good at building the habit science and all of the kind of best time blocking. Like they're very thoughtful about the way they've designed the journal. But they do use SMART as part of the overall framework, SMART goals, to help you kind of get it specific and all the other good things. The only I don't have any criticism about SMART goals other than sometimes 5 things people get a little overwhelmed by the kind of like, am I doing it right feeling? Achievable and relevant are the two that are sort of the just ever so slightly overlap,
Yeah.
and I think, if I were building a model personally for the fewer number of things or criteria you're using, the better the brain's going to remember them. So this is about being
Yeah.
memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Brains tend to remember things best in 3s, actually, but 4 is kind of the upper limit. And so that's my only sort of like pushback, just a smidge. But that's not because I don't use SMART goals. It's not because I don't love them. I think they're quite brilliant, and sometimes you actually can't get it down to 3 or 4.
Just don't leave off the time bound.
I know.
No, exactly.
I beg you, don't leave off the time bound.
Yeah. And because Lisa, you were talking about this earlier about, okay, so like having it be something like, I'm going to do this year. It's like, okay, how do we then bring it into like what that looks like? And so your time bound goal might be an annual goal, but then how do you break that into something that happens a little more regularly, right?
Definitely need some weekly action items. And I would also think about, what are you willing to give up to get the thing?
Oh, that's a good one.
So it doesn't matter if we're talking about somebody that works 40 hours and the rest of the time they're scrolling social media, whether it's somebody that works 40 hours and then they spend another 40 hours as a caregiver for a family member, or whether they actually have an 80-hour corporate job. When you add a couple hours a week of walking, or you add an extra 4 hours a week of networking one-on-one calls, or you add an extra couple hours a week of one-on-one coaching with staff that you're leading instead of just running group meetings, that means that there's a couple hours less to do something else.
Yeah.
So what are you going to delete?
Oh, I love this.
Not, we're just adding more and more and more, and now we're not sleeping.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, so great. Because again, we can be more effective with our time in many ways. We can, figure out like what is our minimum viable product on the thing that we're going to do. So we're compacting it. But at the end of the day, we do have a limited time and attention and all of those things. And as we're including time for rest and all of those things that we're being intentional about, at the end of the day, we need to make some tough decisions. Getting rid of the stuff we don't want to do is probably easy, but there's probably not much of that that's on our list anymore. So it's either things that we want to do or we feel like somebody is expecting from us. And so how do we make some of those hard choices about what's the most important to us? What's the most important in our job? What's the most important to our close friends and family? Like how are we making those decisions? But I think you're absolutely right. That is a thing we're not just piling more new things on every year that we are going to hold ourselves accountable to.
And thinking about like just the total number of goals, right? Maybe 10 or less. For some people, it might be way, way less for the year, right? Because people are really pumped about January 1st and they're like, well, I'm going to start working out, and I'm going to clean up my diet, and I'm going to do more networking, and I'm going to spend more time with new hires, and I'm going to spend more time with staff that have been here for a while that I haven't paid enough attention. It's like, oh my gosh, can you do all of those things? Number one. And number two, do some of those goals conflict with each other? Right? If I have a goal to read a book a month, and I also have a goal to spend way, way, way more time hanging out with family, can I actually do both of those things? Maybe I can.
But maybe I want to try one first.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things that Lisa's bringing up with so somebody has a huge list above 10 goals, which to me is a huge list.
That's probably way too many, right?
But let's just say they do and they can't let them go. They have 12 goals. Great. So let's break it. And again, everybody here would probably say the same thing, which is, brains work better sequentially rather than simultaneously. Habits take around 66 days to form. A goal, depending on what we're talking about, you can think of it as in a 2-month block. Sometimes that's accurate in terms of what's needed to achieve it. Sometimes it's not. But if you did 2 goals every 2 months or 2 habits every 2 months in 6, time chunks, and you're working through it sequentially, and you're actually habit stacking over time.
Yeah.
That's what the brain needs to actually truly focus on something and actually get it to take hold and get traction. One other thing that came up that I this is my favorite.
Oh, you've done it?
The brick. You guys know the brick?
I know it, but I have not tried.
Life changer, like life changer. So when Lisa's saying give up, what are you willing to give up? Immediately social media comes to my mind, or news websites, or constantly checking email, or Netflix, or any of the kind of digital stuff that just like, it's our phones, right? So you just program what apps you want to brick in and brick out. You tap the thing, and then when you go to surf whatever mindlessly, it's just not available, because I leave my brick in my car, and it's just annoying enough to go out to the car to brick back in that my brain's like, just read the book, man. And I'm like, right, that's what I actually wanted to do, is read the book, not surf Instagram. Right.
I love that tip. All right, as we are wrapping up today, I'm going to go around, and is there one thing you think people should keep top of mind in order to have a more meaningful, maybe different 2026? Latrell, I'm going to start with you. Sorry.
I'll bookend the conversation with making sure that your goals align to who you want to become, not just what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, beautiful. And Lisa?
Think about what relationships you really want to improve this year. Is it about your staff being more meaningfully connected to each other? Is it you reconnecting with friends you haven't seen in a long time? And you will be amazed how that feeds into all of your other goals.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. James, what would you say?
I would just say that your potential is just for anyone listening, is just so much vaster, so much more vast and huge than you realize once you understand the science of neuroplasticity and what's actually dormantly sitting inside of your nervous system. You will start seeing yourself in a different light, and that newfound understanding of your true nature, of how much potential is there. You'll start becoming someone different based on a truer understanding of how your nervous system is actually built, which is for change, for growth.
Yeah, we are ready to tap into that. This has been so amazing. I think my one thing would be to pick one thing. So really, as much as there may be many, many things on your list, many, many things on your goals, what is the one thing that would make a difference for you this year? And figure out what is the smallest version of that, what is the very first step you could take to move yourself in that direction, and how do you create that in your life? In order to do that, I would suggest checking back in on your goals and figuring out what's working, what's not. We're not starting now. It doesn't have to be perfect every day, so that we will continue to experiment and evolve and figure out how we're going to do things at our best. But really, I think the thing that so many people that I talk to and myself struggle with is, what is the one thing that would make a difference? And how do I make a difference? Because if we think of what we did last year, did we do a little bit of a lot of things? And if we put all of that attention into one thing, where would we be today? So I think we have that possibility. We want to be in line with our values. We want to think about our relationships and what's important. And really, again, I think we're the best sources of information for ourselves. But we probably could do one thing a little bit differently this year that would make a big difference for us. I want to thank my panelists. Again, I've shared some QR codes and information. I will make sure that you all have the replay and all have the contact information. Please follow these amazing people. They have so much more to say than we could cover in this time period. I think you got the sense of that. And again, thank you so much for being a part of the panel. And thank you to everyone who's watching live and on the replay. This has been such a pleasure and such a great way to get our 2026 really rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dana.
Lisa
Thank
and
you,
Jen.
everybody. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.